Alright, today I'm going to be ranking US presidents. Now, as you can see, we have S tier, A, B, C, D, and F. So I'll be trying my best to not be biased. Of course, I have biases, everyone does, but I'm going to try to not put presidents that should be lower in my higher tiers and vice versa. So, let's just start with George Washington. What is there to say about George Washington? He's the founder of our country. He led the colonies in the Revolutionary War, helped to create the Constitution. Um, like, I think George Washington is an easy S tier. But now we get to John Adams, who unfortunately is not as great. Mainly because he signed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which, first of all, made immigrating to the U.S. harder, and it also criminalized negative statements about the government. So, that's pretty bad. He did keep us out of war with France at a time when there were some tensions. So, I think I'm gonna have to put John Adams in D tier. Yeah. Thomas Jefferson. He had the Louisiana Purchase. He cut the size of the military. He lowered taxes. And he stopped all trade with Europe during the Napoleonic Wars. So, I think Thomas Jefferson, he is a really good president. I'd put him like maybe high B, low A. So we'll put him in A for now. Now, James Madison. He had the War of 1812. Then he signed a peace treaty with the British. He established the second bank of the U.S., cut the size of the military, weakened the power of the federal government. Madison, I think he's a C tier president. Nothing incredible, but he didn't do like awful things, so I think C tier's fair. James Monroe, most famous for the Monroe Doctrine. I think you will also go in C tier. Oh, he did have the Missouri Compromise, though. And the Panic of 1819. I think he'll go into low C, a C minus, I guess, for James Monroe. And we got John Quincy Adams, the infrastructure guy. He did have the corrupt bargain when he did get elected, but I don't know. He was outspoken against slavery, which is a good thing. I think I'll put him at like a low B. So we have a good spread of presidents here so far. Where's Andrew Jackson? Does this list not have Andrew Jackson? Oh, there he is. So, Andrew Jackson. Sorry. Andrew Jackson. He had the Indian Removal Act and the Trail of Tears, which is pretty bad. He dismantled the Bank of the U.S. But that was because of corruption inside the bank. So, I mean, Andrew Jackson, he was the first president who wasn't like a super rich dude. No, well, he was pretty rich. But I mean, he wasn't an elite, you know? He was like a man of the people. He didn't come from. He wasn't a founding father or anything like that, you know? But I think I'm still gonna have to give Andrew Jackson a D tier. We'll put him below John Adams. Now let's see. Martin Van Buren. Um, I mean, he was outspoken against slavery, which is good. He opposed the annexation of Texas. Um, Van Buren, I think he's just mid. I'm gonna put him C tier, maybe above Monroe, I guess. Oh, William Henry Harrison. He was president for 31 days before he died. 1 month, so I don't know. He didn't really do anything. I'll put him at the top of D tier, I guess. John Tyler, you're going to F tier. He annexed Texas, but that led to the Mexican-American War. He vetoed the creation of a new national bank. He was expelled from the Whig Party. He was just, and he wasn't a good guy. I think he was pretty bad. So, just F tier for John Tyler. James K. Polk. Well, he had the Mexican-American War because of John Tyler. He did not designate new territories as free or slave states, which just kind of kicking the can down the road. I've seen a lot of Polk fanboys. I'm not one of them. I think he was kind of the start of, or maybe John Tyler was the start of the build up to the Civil War, you know? But Polk certainly did not help that. I do not know where to put him, though. I guess we'll put him right behind Martin Van Buren, I guess, for Polk. Alright, Zachary Taylor. He did not serve very long. He died in office of cholera. But he made California a free state, which is huge, right? So Zachary Taylor, just for that, I think I'll put him above Martin Van Buren. Yeah. Millard Fillmore. He had the Compromise of 1850, which was a bad compromise. Nobody liked it. He had the Fugitive Slave Act, which really, really bad. But he never owned slaves, and he was generally anti-slavery. He was just trying not to be super divisive. So for Millard Fillmore, put him above Andrew Jackson, below John Adams, I guess. Franklin Pierce. Oh, yeah. He had the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and Bleeding Kansas, of course, Franklin Pierce, he really was a major cause of the Civil War. I have to put him in F tier. I'll put him above John Tyler in F tier, but not by much. He did have the Gadsden Purchase, though, which was pretty nice, but, you know, too much bad to bring him out of the F tier. Now we have Buchanan. Let's just put him right there. Yeah, the Dred Scott decision. The South seceded, and the Civil War started really because of him. Like, he just sat back, didn't do anything. So, yeah, he's got to be F tier, Buchanan. Now, Lincoln, finally, after a stretch of mid to awful presidents, we finally get somebody good. Lincoln, I think, is a high A tier. If not S, I'll put him in S. Lincoln, what is there to say about him? He brought the Union through the Civil War. He abolished slavery. Like, incredible. He did, however, jail 2,000 political opponents without trials or charges. But this was at a time when the United States was at war with itself, and like, it's not good, but it's justifiable for sure, So, that's the only thing that gives me pause, makes me want to put him in A tier, but I think I'll leave Abraham Lincoln in S. Now, Andrew Johnson, I mean, he purchased Alaska, Seward's Folly. That's something. He was impeached, and he was actually only acquitted by 1 vote, so he was firing so many people that that's why he got impeached, just because he was firing everybody. He was also personally, like, a really bad person for the most part, right? I mean, most of these people are, sorry to say this, but honestly they are. But yeah, I think Andrew Johnson, he's definitely an F tier. Like, you could make an argument for D because he, like, unlike somebody like John Tyler, he stayed loyal to the United States, even though he was a Democrat at the time. And he was on the same ticket as Lincoln. Don't know how he got on the ticket, but John Tyler actually joined the Confederates as, I don't know, as a general? As a something. Point is, John Tyler sucks. Andrew Johnson also sucks, but I don't think as much. So, we'll put him there. Now, Ulysses S. Grant. I do really like Ulysses S. Grant. Vicksburg and all that. He did have some corruption in his administration, but I don't think that was really his fault, it was his responsibility, but he wasn't directly involved. I think Ulysses S. Grant I'll put in the B tier above John Quincy Adams. I don't think he's quite A tier material, but he is definitely up there. He's better than these mid guys, So now we get to Rutherford. I mean, he ended Reconstruction, but so would Tilden, I believe was his opponent. It would have ended no matter what, so I can't blame that entirely on him, the ending of Reconstruction, but he did allow Jim Crow laws to happen, right? So I have to put him in F tier. I'll make the Franklin Pierce fans, all three of them, happy. I'll put him below Franklin Pierce. Oh, now James A. Garfield. He was assassinated 200 days into office. But he was very anti-corruption in government hiring. And he was very pro-education rights for African Americans. So that's like really good. Like, especially for the time, 1881. Like, he was way ahead of his time. I think if he was able to serve his full term and maybe even another 4 years, he would have gone down as like a top 5 president for sure. I think I'm gonna put him in A tier. I'll put him above Thomas Jefferson, just because he was so great for his time. He was so pro civil rights, But now we get to Chester Arthur. I think he is the embodiment of mid. You think mid, you think Chester Arthur. Or at least I do. I mean, he grew the Navy. He reformed the tariff system. I don't know. I'll put him in C. Like, maybe a high C. I don't want to put him ahead of Madison, but there you go. Now, Grover Cleveland. This is an interesting one. He fired a lot of people. Congress tried to limit his power to fire people, but he fought against that and retained his right to fire people. A lot of vetoes, I believe, as well. May have been the most vetoes of any president, if I'm recalling correctly. But Grover Cleveland, not a good person. I mean, you could say Herbert Hoover. Actually, Herbert Hoover, I think, was kind of a good person. John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, not a good person. As much as that people would like to disagree. He was not a great person. Most presidents are not, so. But Grover Cleveland, he sent troops to break a strike, which isn't great. There was an economic depression during his time. So I think I'm going to put him in D tier. Both Grover Cleveland's in D tier, I guess. Now, Benjamin Harrison. He had the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was very necessary for the time. It effectively banned monopolies. So that's a good thing, I think, in my opinion. He had the McKinley Tariff, which was okay. But he did also print a lot of money. He did have a money printing problem. He did cause a little bit of a depression because of that, but I still think he's kind of mid. I'll put him like below Chester Arthur. Now we got William McKinley. He had the Spanish-American War. He did conquer some other places, do some imperialism, which isn't great. He did put tariffs on foreign goods, which it is what it is, you know. Um, I mm, I think I'll put him at a low C. I think above Monroe and below Polk. I think that's a good place for McKinley. Now we get to, spoiler alert, my favorite president, Theodore Roosevelt. Um, and I just cannot say enough good things about this guy. Um, he built the Panama Canal, or helped build it, which is great. I'll just put him up here. All right. I'm trying not to be biased. Like, if I was truly, truly not biased, I could put him there, right? I can move him down a spot. I think that's what I'll do. But, um, yeah, he had a lot of trust busting, which was great for the Gilded Age. He had food and drug safety regulations, which is great. Um, he got a Nobel Prize for negotiating peace in the Russo-Japanese War, which is fantastic, you know. And he had great foreign policy with his big stick diplomacy. So, just can't say enough great things about Theodore Roosevelt. Now we get to Teddy Jr., William Howard Taft. He, I mean, he improved the postal service, which is nice. Um, he did some more trust busting, but not, he kind of, he technically did more than Roosevelt, but he was kind of shutting it down a little bit, slowing it down by the end of his first term. So Theodore Roosevelt didn't like that. I'm not a huge fan of him stopping that. He did create the federal income tax, the 16th Amendment. I I think Taft, I'll put him at a low B. He's okay. He's okay. Oh, no. Woodrow Wilson, our worst president. I mean, oh my goodness. This guy showed a Ku Klux Klan movie in the White House where he allowed them to use one of his quotes in it. Um, the movie's called The Klansman, or The Birth of a Nation. Awful. Awful, awful, awful. He also had like a god complex. He thought we could intervene everywhere and fix everyone's problems because nobody knew more than him. All right. I think that is an awful way to look at things. So I'm putting Woodrow Wilson in F tier. He's just horrible. Now we get to Warren G. Harding, who isn't much better. Honestly. I mean, compared to Woodrow Wilson, anybody will look like an incredible president, I guess. But he had the Teapot Dome scandal, of course. He was really, like, I think unserious. He wasn't really like presidential. I I'll put him at the top of F tier, cause why not? Calvin Coolidge, Silent Cal. He was nice. Uh, he was our president during the Roaring Twenties. It was a big economic boom. He cut taxes and the debt. He didn't interfere with the free market. He reduced regulations on businesses. But all these things together did create the circumstances for the Great Depression, so I'm not going to put him in S tier or anything like that. I'll put him in the middle, maybe lower A tier. So yeah, Herbert Hoover. Ooh, I think this might be another F tier. I think he's better than Warren G. Harding though. Because of course he had the Great Depression. It was not his fault. Okay, it was not Herbert Hoover's fault. I've seen a lot of people try to say it's Herbert Hoover's fault for the Great Depression. No, it is not. Not at all. But, however, it is his fault for handling it poorly. He prolonged it for sure. So, I think overall, Herbert Hoover, not a good president. Because he didn't do anything in a time when we needed action. So, speaking of needing action, a time of needing action, we have FDR. 1933 to 1945. That is a heck of a long time to be president. He had the New Deal, which did help us bring us out of the Great Depression, which is great. Of course, he led us through World War II, which is incredible. He did have really strong leadership in a time where that's what we really needed. The only real big ding I have on FDR is he made internment camps for Japanese Americans, which is bad. Very, very bad. Like, he's not going in the S tier because of that. In fact, I'll put him there, FDR, overall, really great president, except for the freaking. He also tried to pack the Supreme Court, which is not good, but internment camps are mainly the big issue I have with FDR. That's the reason he's not up here by Lincoln, or by his cousin, Theodore. But let's move on to Harry S. Truman. Oh boy, I have some opinions on him. Of course, he did intervene in Korea, in the Korean War, which I'm not a big war guy, so of course I didn't care for that. He did end World War II, or he was president when World War II ended, I should say. He didn't end it himself. Well, he kind of did end it himself, because he did drop 2 nukes on Japan, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is actually indefensible in my opinion. I understand why at the time all the people around him wanted him to. From the information he had, it seemed like a good idea, but I just do not think it was. For that reason, I think I have to put Truman at an F tier. Put him at the mid of F, just because I think that's indefensible. Killing hundreds of thousands of civilians, innocent civilians, in Japan, I think that's just terrible. But after Truman, we did have Eisenhower, who is actually a really, really good president. He did create our interstate highways, which is great. He ended the Korean War, which is good. He was pretty anti-communist, but so were most everybody at the time, so can't give him points or reduce points for that. Eisenhower, I think he'll go at the top of A tier. Put him there at number 4 for now. Now, John F. Kennedy. I do really like John F. Kennedy. He did have the Bay of Pigs invasion disaster, you know. He didn't send in air support, but don't really know why he did that. Just kind of, I don't know. But that was pretty bad. But he did lead us through the Cuban Missile Crisis excellently. He probably prevented World War III, if we're being honest. And he did attempt to disband the CIA because of fears of corruption, which I think are perfectly valid. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Kennedy, personally. I think I'll put him up here, high in A tier. Yeah. So, we've had a pretty good run of presidents, except for Truman, which some people would put up here in the A tier, B tier. So, pretty good run of presidents. Now we get to LBJ. He did create Medicare and Medicaid, which I think is good. He had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is fantastic. He did escalate the Vietnam War, though, and he was kind of freaky, if you know what I mean. He was pretty inappropriate in the White House. So, I'll put him low B tier. LBJ. Now, Richard Nixon. He withdrew from Vietnam. He created the Environmental Protection Agency. I think besides Watergate, Richard Nixon was actually a really decent president. Like, sans Watergate, I'd put him probably like here. Honestly, I would. Nixon, though, Watergate, spying on people, on political opponents. I don't know. Put him at I actually have no idea for Richard Nixon. I'll put him above LBJ, I guess. Just because. Call me whatever you want. I'll defend Richard Nixon. I hate to do it, but I have to. I think he was a good president. Now we get to Gerald Ford. Ford kind of sucked. There was a recession. He boosted oil production. He did pardon Nixon. He was not president for very long. Only a few years. So I think I'm gonna put Gerald Ford top of D tier, just cause. All right, now Jimmy Carter. Man, I hate to talk about Jimmy Carter because I have to talk about like how pretty bad he was. Honestly, because I like Jimmy Carter. I do. I really do, honestly. If this was how much I like presidents, it'd probably be like Theodore Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy would be up there, and then probably Jimmy Carter. Because Jimmy Carter, I think, is just a fantastic person. Not a fantastic leader, though. He did have the Camp David Accords. He negotiated peace between Egypt and Israel, which is fantastic. Honestly, fantastic. Big props to Jimmy Carter. Um, but the economy was pretty bad. You can't really blame that all on Jimmy Carter. But he did have the Iran hostage crisis, which it really sucked. You know, I still want to put Jimmy Carter, I think, in C tier. I don't think I can. I got to put him at the top of D. I just can't justify putting him in C tier. I do like him, though. If we were judging by character, he'd be at the top. No question. Oh boy. Now we're getting into the controversial ones with Ronald Reagan. Of course, he did have his supply side economics, also known as trickle down economics or Reaganomics, which I think were pretty bad in the long run if we're being completely 100% honest. I think it was great for the short term, but really bad consequences in the long term. Just like Gerald Ford boosting oil production, I think that was great for the short term, bad in the long term. I think it's kind of the same thing here, but on a ridiculous scale. I think the long term effects have been disastrous from supply side economics. Uh, but he did end the Cold War, which is great. Like he handled that beautifully. Mr. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. He did that have the Iran Contra scandal though. I mean, man, I'll put him at the bottom of B tier. Oh, he did have the war on drugs though. Oh man, I forgot about that. That sucks. Cause I don't hate Reagan. I don't think Ronald Reagan's the devil. Oh, I gotta drop him down. I'll put him ahead of McKinley. He can sit there. C tier, low C tier. But now we have HW. No new taxes. That didn't turn out well. But he did have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is fantastic. Um, then he had the Gulf War. He wasn't fantastic for the economy. I think part of that, though, is just Reagan was so good for the economy during his time in office. Anyone after would have had a little bit of recession. But that's expect. I don't blame that on HW. HW, I'll put him at a high B. Yeah. Bill Clinton, he was impeached for sleeping with Monica Lewinsky, which is abhorrent, awful, honestly, you know. But he did have welfare reform and North American Free Trade Agreement, which, okay. He's just a slimy guy, in my opinion. I know there are some Bill Clinton lovers out there. I'm just not one of them. Putting him above Jimmy Carter just seems disrespectful to me. I have to put him lower. I'll put him above Grover Cleveland, I guess. George W. Bush. I like George W. Bush. He was not a good president, if we're being honest here. Of course, he had the war on terror after 9/11. You know, the 2008 financial crisis. We got Hurricane Katrina, which he handled awfully. Um, George W. Bush, man, I'm gonna put him at the bottom of D tier. I don't think he's F tier material, but he is pretty bad. Now we get to Obama, Barack Obama. He had Obamacare, which I think it was a good idea. I didn't love the execution, but he was trying. He had the Iran nuclear deal, which I'm not a fan of, but it could have been worse, I guess. He did legalize gay marriage in all 50 states, though, which is a huge plus. We respect and appreciate gay people here. So, I think Obama. Ooh. All in all, I think he was okay. I think he was pretty mid. I'll put him. I think he's better than Madison. We'll put him at the top of C tier. Now we have Donald Trump. Well, oh boy. I think no matter what I say, I'm going to get a lot of backlash on this one. Because I feel like I've gotten pretty cold takes on most of these guys. But Donald Trump, no matter what, I'm going to get some haters. So, okay. Let's start off with the fact that he incited an insurrection, which is pretty terrible. I'm not gonna lie. That is pretty terrible, inciting an insurrection. He also has 34 felonies, which isn't a good thing. um, he did not handle COVID very amazingly. Well, we'll put it that way. I mean, it's COVID, not his fault. I just don't think he handled it as well as he could. I'm not sure if Hillary Clinton would have handled it better, and I'm not sure if Joe Biden handled his end any better either. But it's a tough situation, COVID. I still have to ding him for it, though. He's also not a very good person. But yeah, I've said that most presidents aren't very good people. But now let's get into some positives. I've said a lot of negatives there. You may think, oh, F tier easily based on what I've said. But, he also, more negatives, real quick. He also had some really big tariffs, which aren't a good thing. I mean, they're not the worst thing in the world, whatever. But he also really hard on the border. Like, a lot of people are saying he hates Mexican people. I don't believe that's true. I think it's coming from a place of fear more than anything, which is understandable. Uh, uh, and we are getting a lot of illegal immigrants. I just don't think building a wall is the solution there, and mass deportation. I don't think that's the right choice either. But now let's get into some positives. All right, he did have the COVID vaccine roll out. Not enough people talk about it. The vaccine, it was Trump's. he helped. Well, he didn't really help develop it, but he paid a lot of money. I'm pretty sure to get the vaccine rolled out. Which is great, fantastic. As far as I know, there aren't really any negative effects to the vaccine. It works great. There are a lot of booster shots, but hey, if it works, it works. So, and it was developed really, really quickly in the grand scheme of things. If we're being completely fair, um, he maintained peace with North Korea. Hey, that's a great thing. He also, you could argue, he prevented World War III, because that was a really tough situation where we were saying, all the news were saying, sorry, Trump's gonna start World War III. He's gonna get into a war with North Korea. But he actually went to North Korea. He visited with Kim Jong Un, and he maintained peace. So I have to give him big props there. Um, he deregulated businesses, which did help the economy a lot. He had a really good economy um, before COVID, obviously. And he had a good foreign appearance. He was hard on other countries. He really had that big stick. He didn't really speak softly, though. um, but overall, where would I put Donald Trump? Man, I mean, he was impeached twice, and he's probably going to be president again. So he is very unique. Very unique. Ooh. I think I'll put him above Ronald Reagan. Right there. Put him like mid to low C tier. Um no, Joe Biden. There isn't a Joe Biden on this list, which I really should have checked before I started this. But all right. So Joe Biden, he did. Let's start with some positives before I get into the negatives, because there are a lot of negatives. The positives, uh, he had some student debt relief, which is always nice, helping college students. He had the Green New Deal. He was trying to pass some environmental regulations. It's always nice to look out for the environment. Um, I mean, what else good did Joe Biden do? I mean, that's kind of it. Joe Biden hasn't really done a lot. He's been very idle. So I guess we'll get into the negatives now. Oh my goodness. So Joe Biden, well, the first big thing, of course, is him pulling out of Afghanistan, which in and of itself, not a bad thing. I think it was time for sure, right? I think Trump would have done it as well. I just think he handled it horribly, like incredibly awfully. We left American citizens there in Afghanistan. We left tons of equipment that now they can use against us or our allies, which is awful. It's just really not a good situation there. Um, then, of course, we have the economy, which has been awful. It's not entirely Biden's fault. A lot of that is, most of that, I'd say, is just COVID. But Joe Biden certainly is not helping that. Um, but the big thing is some wars, not necessarily us getting into wars, but wars starting because of our inaction or weak leadership. I'm not a big war guy. I'm glad we're not like actively involved in the wars in Ukraine and Israel Palestine. Uh, but I don't think those would have happened if we had a stronger leader who's honestly like mentally capable. Because Joe Biden recently had his first debate with Donald Trump, and I think he proved to the world that he is not capable of running the country. Um, as of right now, he is still running, he is still president. I believe he should step down and let Kamala be president and be the incumbent uh, candidate. You know, that I truly believe that. So, yeah, I don't think October 7th would have happened if we had a different president. I don't think Russia would have invaded Ukraine if we had a different president. I can't blame those entirely on Joe Biden, but he does share some blame. So, yeah, I know I'm ragging on Biden a lot, but we have had worse presidents. I still think I'd put him in the F tier. I if I had to choose, I'd put him right below Herbert Hoover and above Warren G. Harding. I think that's where I'd put him. Right there. So, that's my tier list. Sorry we had to end it on a sour note, but thank you for watching.